what's the one good thing that wouldn't have happened if you weren't drinking? Do you have one?
Well, I have two. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of the Soberness podcast. I'm your host, Cat Greenleaf, joined by my incredible team. If everyone could go around and introduce yourselves briefly and let us know what you do here on the show. Cat Serrano, hit it off.
All right. Hi, my name is Cat Serrano, and I am the social media manager. Hi, I'm Ridula Singh, and I do sales, analytics, and partnerships here on the podcast.
Hi, I'm Raquel. I am a senior talent producer. I book all the talent that can't equal the talent of Cat Greenleaf.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll take it.
I'm Esteban Serrano, and I produce, edit, and do all the things.
Does all the things.
Yeah.
He's married to Cat Serrano, so they are a power couple. That's actually one cool thing about this team is everybody's married, and we all have boys, except Raquel has spoiled the mix with one girl. Not spoiled the mix, it's enhanced the mix. But interesting, right, to find a group of all married people in one place these days. So why are we all in one place today? Because early on, when we conceived of Soberness, there was some talk about me interviewing myself by way of introducing myself to the audience. And that kept not happening because I kept not being able to wrap my head around it. So my incredible team stepped up and very supportively said that they, in fact, would interview me for this show. Why are we doing it this week? Because it's my birthday. That's right. 27 again. I don't know, just keeps happening every year. My birthday is March 13th, and we are, in fact, hosting a very special live Soberness event, but we'll talk about that later on the day itself. But so for today, it's kind of a get to know ya. Get to know me, and maybe I'll get to know you guys as well. So the team has come up with some questions, and I promise to answer them. I promise to try to answer them. So who wants to start?
I'll kick it off. So, Kat, when did you know that you loved being in front of the camera, or at least wanted to interview people and be a storyteller? What was the first inkling for you that really set it off and set this trajectory in motion?
Ooh, well, here's what happened. I was 27, and I was seeing a man in San Francisco, and I was like sort of drunk and overweight and not really that into any of what I was doing. It was not a good time. And it occurred to me to look around my life and see, what did I enjoy? What did I actually like? And the main thing that brought me joy during the day was the features segment on Mornings on 2. And that was this morning show on KTVU. And so I thought, well, they seem like they're having fun. So I called them and asked if I could come be an intern. And I was an old ass intern. I was 27. I wasn't affiliated with a college. There were no credits to be given, but I just wanted to be there. And when I got there, the minute I walked into the newsroom, I was like, yep, this is where I want to be. This is for me. And I had always been pretty decent at asking questions, and I don't have any other real like hard skills. So it was a good fit. And that was in, let's see, if that was 20, well, I'm about to be 53, so that when I was 27, so that was, a minute ago. It was a magical time too. I just remember also like going from not knowing what you want to do and that casting about feeling and not really sure what your purpose is to clicking right into it. That was really beautiful and actually felt like a gift, because then I had a place to put all my energy and a reason to ask all my questions.
So what was your first really big interview, and how did you prepare for it?
It was Mr. Rogers. And I prepared for it by telling him what a big, giant fan I was. And then I couldn't believe it. And what happened was he was on Mornings on 2. And I was the intern, but I asked him, hey, do you mind if we do this together? Because I'm trying to get my reel together and I'm a really big fan. And he let me. And so that was actually another magical moment, because I had been a fan forever. And I thought he was doing such good work in education for young people. And I was all about it. And in fact, I think about him every day because when I come home, I do put on my home sweaters, which is something that I picked up from him. He really sort of taught me that difference between your life out there and your life in here. And my life in here has a different wardrobe than my life out there. So that was one of the things that I learned from that very kind man.
Okay, I have one more and then we'll go to Mridula. What was your favorite interview? Now that I know they're all your favorites, but what was your absolute favorite? You felt it flowed and you were like, oh my gosh, this is an icon. And I really love being able to capture this interview and be able to glean some knowledge from this interview.
Harry Belafonte, hands down. Yeah, I interviewed him at the UN and I asked him, was he so sick of Deo? Was he just never wanted to hear it again? And he said, that is my passport. That song got me all around the world. Why wouldn't I want to sing it every day? It is my passport. And I loved that. And it stuck with me. I think it can be easy to roll our eyes at things that we're used to or, not new anymore. And, oh God, I have to do it every day. But he looked at it as I get to do it every day. And look what it has done for me. And that attitude of gratitude really stuck with me. Because you meet a lot of celebrities who are jaded and who do throw out jaded comments about, oh, I have to get my makeup done again. This is really crazy. But he was pure and humble and grateful, which is how I feel. Grateful every motherfucking day. I'm so grateful for everything all the time. So I really love hearing other grateful people. All right, Mridula, take it away. I know you've been chomping at the bit.
So actually, I have heard you on your interviews say that when you hear people say, I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic, you say, I am not grateful.
Listen, I know we're all supposed to say, hi, I'm Cat, I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Gratitude is not the first thing on my list when I think about my alcoholism. I think about what a shit show it caused for so many decades in my life.
Exactly.
The amount of time I still spend regretful of the dumb things I did, regretful of what I've done to my body, regretful for the people I've hurt. There's really nothing good about it. There's not. When people say, if I wasn't an alcoholic, I wouldn't be here today. But I was like, fine before I was an alcoholic. I didn't feel like I needed to go through all the stuff or practicing alcoholic. But listen, you don't get to choose how life teaches you lessons. And I certainly would have not have chosen this one. Listen, there's probably worse addictions and there's worse, obviously, people have led a lot more dramatic lives than mine. But in my life, and it's the only one I got, I can say that I have not loved being an alcoholic, and I have not loved the damage I feel I have caused. I'll never love it, probably. So I lied, I guess, when I say I'm grateful for everything.
Call you out, but I was like, oh, that I remembered that you say that when I listened to your show. Well, on that theme, you asked him daily in one of our earlier episodes a question saying, what's the one good thing that wouldn't have happened if you weren't drinking? Do you have one?
Well, I have two. The first one, now I'm ping-ponging on this very thing, but the amount of learning I have been able to do and the amount of self-knowledge I have been forced to unearth is actually great. And I probably wouldn't have done that had I not been a recovering alcoholic. So what's one good thing I wouldn't have had if I wasn't a drinker? I wouldn't have had how I do feel now, how I have been able to sort of dive into my darker parts. I don't think I would have had the impetus to do that otherwise. But the other real thing that I think I wouldn't have had is my husband. I was I got drunk the night I met him because I was nervous. And I don't think I would have had what it takes to talk to the cute boy at the party and to have gone out to dinner with him later that night. And I don't think I would have done that if I wasn't drinking. So, and my husband is, along with my sons, my very greatest blessing. So I do feel grateful to alcohol for that one. And it was vodka sodas, and it was at a rooftop bar in Manhattan, and it was August 22nd, 2001. And it was a magical night of drinking because I didn't fall over. We drank and drank and drank, but I didn't say anything offensive, and I still got the guy. And that was in 2001. So, 24 years later, it's still going. Thank you, vodka sodas.
I immediately want to know how many.
22. It was so many. It was a night. It was so hot out, and it was just over and over. We just kept ordering. But thank God, thank God. And then, the next day he had tracked down my number and called me. And the way it was going for me at that time in my life, men weren't exactly tracking down my number and calling me. So thank God. Thank God for alcohol. Thank God for him tracking down my number. Very grateful for that one.
What do you miss about drinking? Because I've had this conversation with friends of mine who are sober, and there are certain things that they have romanticized about. One of them is it's summertime and it's a vibe, and there's certain things that they miss. So I was just curious, with if it's not too painful to talk about, what is it that you do miss about it?
I'll tell you, it's a great question. I miss the transition from day to night. I miss the transition from your work life to easing into your mellow evening at home. I miss the glamour of meeting a friend for drinks. Meeting someone for a smoothie doesn't quite have the same soupçon. I miss... Really, I was an isolated drinker. I like to sit by myself with bottles of wine and watch the world go by. I really enjoyed that. It's not quite as exuberant, or I don't have the same kind of internal trips, when I just do it with a cup of coffee. I really enjoyed the places my mind would go when I'd sit alone and be drinking and thinking about stuff and dreaming stuff up. And so I miss that. But if I were to pick one thing, it would be that transition about 5 o'clock in the evening. How do you turn your day to night? How do you shift gears? That's still not easy for me. And I still don't really have an answer for it. I miss that. I do. And I miss the way the scotch, or the scotch drinker, the way the scotch felt when it first hit my tongue and then would slide down the back of my throat. I miss that burn and knowing it's on. I miss it being on. So, and I try to not think about that because I don't want to be missing it. But when it does occur to me, it is a painful memory, in fact, because I do miss it. But I don't think about alcohol that much anymore, truly. I don't, it just takes me to such bad places almost every time that I think I've moved past the really sitting around and missing it. But if I am going to do that during the day, it's probably around 5 o'clock.
Did you find that you had to shift certain friends in your life because they were kind of your drinking friends? Because I have friends that had to get sober off of drugs, and they were an old life that they couldn't be a part of anymore because it was just too much of a heavy reminder for them, and they had to kind of reset their whole life again. Was there any sector of your life that you felt you had to do that as well?
It's so interesting. It's a great question, Raquel. And I downloaded some people, but not because I identify with them with drinking. It's because I was embarrassed about how I acted around them. And maybe didn't treat them so nicely, or said stuff that was crazy that I wouldn't have said if I was sober. And I'm so ashamed and humiliated that it was just sort of easier to back out, which sounds really weak as I say that out loud here, but that's true. And I have thought over the years, gosh, should I forge inroads again? And, by the way, when I have sort of reconnected with others that I had put out with my drinking self, they don't seem to look at it the same way that I did. They're not like, and remember that one time you did that terrible thing? But I do still carry some guilt, and more than guilt, embarrassment, of things I said or did.
Would you work a step to get back with them? Is that something as part of your recovery that you would ever do? I know you've been in the program for a while. Is that something that you would consider doing? Because I know that also, it's a part of the healing process, whether it's through, getting sober, but just in life with the healing process of being with friends or people we might have cut off and didn't really fully have a karmic bond to fix.
Yes, maybe. And I've made some inroads with a couple people in that category, and then others not quite yet. I'm not ready quite yet. And they're not beating down my door either, although I wonder if they were like, why did she dump me? Maybe I should follow up on that. Maybe because, like, as I said earlier, it sort of like never really seems to be that deep, as deep as it is for you. The other person, it's sort of a thing that happens in their day and they move on. So yes, perhaps I would go back. Most of the relationships I felt like I stomped on have been repaired with a lot of love and attention. But like I said, there's a couple outliers that maybe after this conversation, I might think about reaching out. I don't know if anyone else here on the team has things like that. It's very hard, right, to move past the blocks that we have created for ourselves, and so carefully did I create these blocks, and so fully, and I've been 11 years without drinking alcohol, and I can say that I don't want it to take another 11 years till I feel like I've smoothed things out with all the people. But and then I think maybe I don't need to smooth everything out with every people. So work in progress.
I think I might be the only other one here who is also in a 12-step program, right? Yeah. I'm breaking my anonymity here, but I can relate to that. But, I want to ask you about your guests who come on, who share. Do you sometimes go, why are you saying this out loud?
Yes.
Do you feel protective towards them?
Yes, all the time. In fact, we just had a situation, Anthony Weiner was on the show, and boy, talk about public flameouts. That guy lost his high-profile marriage. He went to prison for indecency. He lost his role as a senator for New York. I mean, he lost everything over his sex addiction. He comes on our show and he's just telling it like it is. And he's telling us that when he was in prison, he treated the other inmates like constituents. I'm like, oh my God, don't say that. That sounds so terrible. Like you're just treating them like they work for you. The whole thing I couldn't believe how forthcoming he was.
Just like when you're running for office, you're trying to communicate that I'm one of you to your constituents. I was able to do that in prison as well to some degree, but I not that I would recommend it to anyone. It was a good
prison.
Yeah.
Sex addiction is a really hard one. Lots of people are addicted to alcohol and talk about it. Lots of people have had drug problems and talk about it. But sex addiction is, and he pointed this out several times, it's sort of this last frontier of people wanting to claim it. He's had no choice because it was so public. He could have just shrunk away, but instead he chose to address it. We got so many comments. This guy isn't a real sex addict. He's just trying to excuse bad behavior, and sex addiction isn't even a thing. Men just say that. Listen, as an addict, I am here to tell you, you can be addicted to anything. Sex addiction, as far as I have heard, is a real thing. And this guy says it is. So who are we to say that that's not something he suffers from? I really felt terrible for him. His behavior was bad. He's said so a million times. As addicts, our behavior is bad. We do bad things when we're under the influence. That's why we get into recovery. So it upset me for two reasons. One is, I think sex addiction is pretty much a proven thing. Two is, so we're just never going to forgive people. So he was bad in his addiction. So forever now, we're just going to be like, you're bad forever. You never get to get better. You never get to have a life again in public. You never get to have a life at all. You know, I people are so mean toward that. And listen, there are a lot of people out there who've done a lot of terrible, terrible things, and they get second and third and fourth chances. So who are we to not give a fellow addict another chance? Whether you're an addict or not, I think forgiveness is really important. You know, we've all had bad days. We've all had bad moments. And as an addict, I've had so many bad days and so many bad moments. And I require a great deal of forgiveness from myself, certainly. But I think all of us owe each other the grace of trying again, of getting over things, of getting better.
I think if you hold yourself accountable, people should give you forgiveness. I mean, if you're holding yourself accountable for things that you have done and, you know, done the time and also, you know, put in the healing necessary and authentically showing up for what you may have caused to others, I think people are owed forgiveness. And that's something people really struggle with forgiveness across the board, I think, and they struggle with accountability and they struggle with forgiveness. And I think people love to hold on to, you know, a war or an argument or something from back in the day, as opposed to saying, you know what, let's reset it and let's move it forward. And I think that's one of the hardest things. And that, as you talked about, like creating the obstacle, creating the wall, some people just can't face their own obstacles. And when did you know for you that it was actually time for you to, I have to get sober? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, before I ever started drinking, I absolutely knew this was going to go off the rails. And I signed right up for it. I could just feel it, that it was coming. But when did I know that I had to really legitimately cut it out after a pretty healthy career of drinking? Yeah, Truman, my little guy, was not even one yet. And I was going to a wedding. And I drank all day leading up to the wedding because I knew that tomorrow it would be over, because I was sick of myself. I was sick of the chaos. I was sick of the lies. I was sick of the apologies I had to make over and over again. I was just sick of it. And I wanted my kids to be proud of me. And I never wanted them to remember me drunk. And Primo, my older guy, was would have been, you know, in his late twos, so 2.5, 2 3/4, and I didn't want them to remember me as a drinker, and that's what happened. And that was September 28th, and so I count September 29th as my sobriety day. And listen, I'm not going to say I haven't had a sip here and there. I'm not going to say I haven't had, you know, really tough times when I have had a drink. It came and it went, and it was awful, and those were awful, awful times. But I never went back to the life I was living. I never went back to hiding alcohol around my house. I never went back to showing up for work so hungover. None of that ever happened. I've experienced a lot of heartbreak in sobriety, the loss of my job, the loss of some very dear friends, and other bad things. And I am now strong enough to not even think about taking a drink. But early on, it was very hard. And I did have some minor slips. And by minor slip, I mean, a sip here and there, I move on. But again, like, it didn't derail me. And that's how I know I've pushed through it, because one sip didn't make me go down and drink a whole liquor store's worth of stuff. It was enough to make me feel guilty as fuck, and I didn't do it again, But when I was in that much pain and somebody leaves a glass of wine on the table, I will admit that I definitely had a sip here and there. So be it.
I have a question. This is back on forgiveness. Earlier you were talking about forgiveness for Anthony Weiner and stuff. Do you think you'll ever forgive yourself and like really let go of the guilt and the shame that you carry? Because that's, in my opinion, it's behind you. You know? So do you think it ever...
Well, I think an unlikely result for me of this show has been learning to let go. And actually, DMC was the most instrumental guest we've had so far for me in that category. He spoke so much about releasing that shame, and he put it in a way I understood it.
There's nothing to be ashamed about, because you beat and defeated. You're a superhero. You prove you can beat and defeat whatever you're struggling against.
I have so much shame around my drinking. So much. I blew up so much stuff. I hurt so
Right.
many people.
Somebody needs to hear that rather than not hear that. Unless you admit how you feel, whether good or bad, you never heal. That's when you receive your power.
And, you know, it comes and it goes. It's interesting. Earlier today, I would have said, yeah, I feel it's behind me. But now that we're talking about it and I'm in it, I'm like, ugh, you know, I don't feel quite as forgiving. What I have to continue to remind myself of is that this is a disease. It's a disgusting fucking disease. And if I can see my way to forgiving other people who have done bad things in their addiction, I certainly can forgive myself. But again, some days are easier than others. And I'll also add to that seeing this as a disease instead of a choice was a big step for me. Our friend Dr. Drew actually helped me out with that. I need to know, is it a fucking disease?
Okay.
Is it a what?
So can you accept, a lot of Americans have trouble with this, that brains get diseases?
Can I accept that brain? Sure. Yep.
And that when brains get diseases, it affects your thinking and your behavior and your choices and your motivation.
Affirmative.
Alcoholism and addiction, which is really one thing to me, is a disease of the brain of motivation. It's a motivational disturbance. And once the motivational disturbance kicks in, multiple other injuries come along with that. Where people freak out with addiction is the fact that the disease is in the brain. The physiology problem is in the brain.
And somehow that was the first time I looked at it as a disease. You know, this shame comes in as you think it's a choice. Well, it's me who keeps reaching for the drink. I'm the one who keeps pouring it. Now, that said, here is the real rub with alcoholism. You don't choose to have it, but only your choice to not indulge it, that's the only thing that will get you sober. That'll be the only thing that will free you. So I feel like alcoholics have it double hard. A, we have this shitty disease, and then B, we have this heavy responsibility that if you want a different life, it is actually all you. Listen, people say my higher power or AA or my sponsor or I appreciate all those things. None of them are my sobriety. Not picking up a drink, that is my sobriety. And how do I do that? Because I decide to not pick it up. And of course, there's so much that goes into helping you build your muscles to be strong enough to decide to not do it. You have to have a reason, I guess, to decide to not do it. But make no mistake, the only way to stop drinking is to stop drinking, is to don't pick it up. Your sponsor doesn't stop you from drinking. Your high power doesn't stop you from drinking. It's you. So A, that's a very big responsibility, but B, you're the victor. You know, you're the one in the end who can take the credit for it.
Exactly. Which is why we should let go.
You're so right. Anything you've let go of that you'd like to share with the class?
I guess grief. You know, grieving certain situations or decisions that I've made because of my grief I've let go of.
That's strong.
Ego. Ooh, that's a good one.
How'd you do that?
When I quit drinking, I knew I couldn't go back to the career I had. And my ego, my pride, my self-esteem was completely tied up in my job title, the company I worked for, the paycheck that came every 2 weeks. I had to let it go. It crops up. It comes in once in a while. It'll be like, hey, I'm still there. It will call itself other names, like self-esteem. It's really ego.
That's so interesting. So how's your self-esteem now that you let go of ego?
My self-esteem comes from, I am a big program person. I got sober in the rooms. So my self-esteem comes from doing, as I've heard in the rooms, esteemable acts. I led a long life of compromising my own dignity. And now when I don't compromise on my principles and my dignity, I feel self-esteem. It's great.
And it looks good on you.
Yeah, that's great.
Letting go of toxic people and toxic situations that were no longer good for me, putting others before myself. And self-worth is the other part of it too, where same thing, we're doing, like getting wrapped up in a career and going after more and more and more accolades and more just more of everything, and adjusting to an industry that is always changing and unfortunately on a downtrend, and having to meet myself and say, okay, self, where are we going next? And being as flexible as possible to finally, even when toxic clients or people have come back and want to bring you back into the mix for a job or what have you, and it no longer serves you, and being okay with that and letting it go and saying, you know what, the money isn't worth it. I'd rather have my sanity and I'd rather have peace. And now I'd rather be there for my kids when I need to be there for them. And having freedom and autonomy for myself and being able to be flexible enough to do the things I want to do. And the other thing, too, is also being in service of others. That's something I always want to do. I always used to say I want to be a millionaire so that I can actually not worry about the money and just be in service for folks. I'm not the millionaire part of it, but I'm now in service of folks even more so, whether through DJing or community for my kids. But that was really letting go of ego, to Merdula's point, letting go of the things that really don't matter and just basically showing up for the right reasons and with the right people.
So I have a question. If your sobriety had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh, I know it exactly. It's by Johnny Thunder, and it's called Verbal Expressions of TV.
Okay.
And it's so dope. If I play it, are we going to get into some rights? So anyway.
I thought you were going to, you love karaoke. I was going to ask if you were going to sing for us.
If you didn't hear me the first time, I'll say it again, I'll say it again, I'll say it again. If you didn't hear me, baby.
So it's funny. It's like, if you didn't hear me the first time, last time when I was on TV, now I'm back, I'm saying it again. So that's the theme song.
Good for you. That's awesome.
I do love that. I will, so often when I'm walking around the city, I will play it on repeat. You know how certain songs just like strike your soul? You know the other one? It's so embarrassing. Actually, the other song that strikes my soul that I've been listening to for decades, it's called Never Alone. It's on the Fame soundtrack. That's true, the movie Fame. And it's a gospel piece. And it's, I choke up even when I think about it. It's so crazy. And so those are two tunes that have been with me for years and years and years and years. And they stick with me.
Who haven't you interviewed that you want to interview?
My dad is one. I would love to know what he thinks about certain things. He's not sober. Well, he is sober. My parents don't drink. Go figure. Let's see. Who would I want to hear? Like a famous sober person? Oh my goodness. Why don't I have an answer for this ready to go? Gosh. Chuck D. I'd like to interview Chuck D. Rock, have we ever reached out to him?
I think you need to give me an impassioned note for him. I have a Philip update for you too, by the way.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So Chuck D is one I've always wanted to interview. I have some people I'd like to go back and interview again. People who have been sober in public and then been not sober in public. And I think it's actually a pretty brave thing to come out and talk about your sobriety in public, because you may fall off the wagon. You may not keep it up, and that's why in the Root and 12-step programs, you're not supposed to ever speak about this out loud. And frankly, we've had some people turn us down because they want to really adhere to that. And I do understand. And Hank Azaria and I talked about this a lot when he was on the show.
I waited for years whether I should do that, talk in public, either at even a public private gathering like that or through a mic like this or wherever. And there are good reasons not to do it. The headline good reasons are a lot of people have done that in the past, famous people. And then 2 weeks later, they're out again, because that's how this will work for folks like us eventually. Is much more important, especially in this world we live in, where we can talk into a mic, and there's podcasts and all kinds of things and social media where that can just go everywhere. I think the times have changed so much that it's to me, just the good of it outweighs the potential downside.
It's a hard thing. It's like, well, the traditions say you're not supposed to talk about your sobriety in public. But if talking about your sobriety in public can help other people, that's something else as well, And so, the rules for AA were written in the 50s or something, right, Radula? And anyway, no matter when they were written, it makes sense. You don't want to go out there and hold yourself out as somebody who's, I'm all about sobriety, and then you fail, and so people can say, oh, see, it doesn't work, I'll just keep drinking. But at the same time, hearing stories is what helps us get through. And in fact, the whole way that Soberness started is that I heard Hank Azaria on stage talking about his sobriety. And I was like, I did not know you could do that. And lo and behold, he did. And look how helpful it was for me. It helped me start this show. Steve Earle is another guy who he'll talk about it all day, every day. I had him on my old show, Talk Stoop. And then I heard him on the radio talking about his sobriety. And I was like, holy cow, if they're doing that, why can't I also, and why can't I use the one skill I have, which is interviewing on a topic that's very important to me. So, and, I'm not really a good devout 12-step person at all. Like, I don't believe you should have to restart your day count if you have a sip. I don't believe you should not ever talk about your sobriety. There are things that I believe you should be able to take medication if you're sick, where some really orthodox 12-steppers don't believe that. They think you need to be, and God bless them, whatever works. And that's the point of our whole show, right? Whatever works, whatever works to, I keep saying it over and over. If there was something major that was messing up your life and you figured out how to curtail that, great. That falls into sobriety for me. Sobriety from the thing that was ruining your life. So that can look many different ways. Sorry, I know I took this a left turn, but all part of the same thing. So who do I want to interview? There are some people, like I said, who've kind of gone up and down. But the truth is, I've had the great opportunity to interview most people I've really wanted to talk to. The people I really love the most is the real oldsters. People who've lived through a lot, people who have stories to tell. You can go through a lot by the time you're young, but I got a real thing for the octogenarians. Oh, like Dick Cavett. Like, I'm trying to get Dick Cavett on, right? Raquel, Dick Cavett was one of my favorite interviews ever on Talk Stoop. This guy is so sharp, and even at 88 years old, he's still sharp, and he's a great storyteller. And while he's not sober, he did survive depression. He very famously suffered from depression and has persevered. And I also, as a young guy, suffered from depression pretty badly, and also not that long ago. So to me, that's a real survivor. So I'd like to discuss that with him. Now, in this context, when he was on Talk Stoop, we kind of bantered about the latest book he'd written, but I'd like to have Dick Cavett on to talk about surviving depression, surviving in the entertainment industry, and just surviving.
So of the interviews that you've done so far for Soberness, who surprised you the most?
Honestly, Tim Daly. Tim Daly, our very first guest. He was filled with stories. He was just so cool about it. He was so easy. And I didn't realize how young he had gotten sober, and yet he still is so serious about maintaining his sobriety, and it's still a part of his everyday. And so that was surprising for me. Again, I had him on my old show and we just kind of bullshitted about whatever, but to hear the depth of his work in sobriety was surprising to me. How about you guys? Who surprised you?
Oh, I liked a couple of guests that we had from our little trip to Washington, D.C., to Mindful Drinking Fest. I heard some terms that I had never heard before, Berlin sober. And I love the idea of millennials or maybe Gen Zs calling alternating a alcoholic drink with a non-alcoholic alternative zebra striping. Love that term. Another animal themed phrase I love. Those couple were a real surprise to me. Not surprise to me. I really enjoyed those conversations. Maybe because I was also there and, so I just feel more part of. Selfishly. Alcoholics tend to be selfish. And you know what I really liked? Talking about some kinds of addictions get a pass versus others that don't. Money gets a pass all the time. Greed is good. And Susie, we live in a culture of greed is good. And Susie talked a lot about when is enough? People go into debt. We know from social media, which I do too much scrolling. That's how I fill the hole in my soul, scrolling social media, now that I don't drink. All these influencers that are out there, everybody is promoting a very rich, luxe lifestyle and how easy it is to fall into the trappings now of, I need that bag, I need that necklace, I need that whatever, treatment, I need to look a certain way. And so I think money gets a pass a lot.
And it shouldn't.
I don't think anyone was surprising. I think I just love how real and natural you guys all are, when sharing your stories. And there's not any how vulnerable you guys are. I think that's beautiful. Like every single one of your guests have been like that. And that's what I love most about it. We need more of that.
By the way, go ahead, Rock.
No, I was just going to add to that, saying that to your earlier point, as you know, we deal with it very close in my situation. And the issue I had with family is back in the day when you got sober, it was a friend that was calling the house or, and there's people in my world that there's still shame and guilt attached with being sober. And one of the things that I work on with my family is that we are going to obliterate that because there should be no shame in this game. There should be no one feeling bad about a disease. And so having very real conversations about that. So I think that removing a stigma of something that's gone on for years and years and years, generations and generations, that is, that kind of thinking is what causes problems to happen because people go inward. They're not discussing it. They're not putting the light to the darkness that goes with what it is. So I applaud you for really bringing that into the light, because what's so a breath of fresh air that I think for people that watch and listen to Soberness with you is that they feel like they're not alone. They feel like, what, I can actually be, I can breathe a sigh of relief because I'm not isolated or in this. I'm not going through this by myself. There's other people out there that are going exactly through what I've been through. And it's so nice to find my people that can talk about it in the open. So the fact that you're doing this, I know you've worked with Dopey, and there's other folks out there that are really trying to move it forward so that people don't have guilt and shame around a disease. And I applaud you for that. And for the guests that are able to face it and say, you know what, let's talk about it, because I don't want it in the darkness anymore. It's important for people to feel that they're not alone.
I really applaud the guests. I mean, if someone asked me to come on to a show and talk about my deepest, darkest, I'd be like, no way. So the fact that people have not only come on, but like brought it, really brought it and told their tales, I think is, it's special. It's really something. There's something about having to remove something, at least for me. The microphone and the camera are empowering to me. They always have, right? I've been a journalist for 30 years. So that's my medium. But I don't know. I guess I feel somehow like when the red light goes on, I have no choice but to bring it. Like, that's the job. That's what I'm there to do. And I don't want to waste anybody's time, telling false tales. But that's just sort of my take on it. The fact that the guests show up in that way too is dope. I mean, I'm really grateful for it.
How about people who don't want to use the word addiction? I felt like Stacey London used the word crutches a lot in her episode.
Yes.
And it's fine to use another substitute. I still have crutches.
Yeah.
And for me, the idea of like being addicted to something means that you would screw over family, friends, take money from people, or be irresponsible in a way that I try never to be. But over the course of my life, I've had what I call crutches, where I have gone through stages where something has been my crutch. It could be sugar, it could be weed, it was cigarettes for a while, it could be alcohol, it could be, some party drug, where it wasn't that I was doing it every day, it's that I was doing it to escape some kind of pain. And if it was easier to eat a fabulous glazed donut when I did in fact eat gluten.
Are you gluten-free?
I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. I know.
Do you have any crutches? Yes. Any?
God.
But a crutch that you use, something you use to check out.
Yeah. Murder podcasts. I listen to murder podcasts to stop the racing thoughts, because as I'm going to bed and as I'm waking up, unfortunately, my thoughts are awful. It's no good. And, I think back in the day I would have taken an Ambien to go to sleep. I don't do that anymore. So I put in, I have to pick bad podcasts, because if they're good, then I'll want to listen. So I put in bad things. The visual for me is that it like eats the thought. And, listen, I meditate, I do all the things, but none of that stops the thoughts like the bad podcasts. So that's a pretty big crutch of mine. I've been trying to work myself out of it, so I can sit with the bad thoughts. But I would try to sit with the bad thoughts so you can get around murder that people did. So anyway, that's a pretty big crutch of mine.
I like terrible television when I'm going through something and I just want to zone out. I will watch the most garbage television. I'm not going to share any shows because that's how garbage it is.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I get lost in terrible TV. And I let myself sit there and allow myself to like just be there. And I lay and just don't do anything. I need some time sometimes. And that's okay.
Love that.
What is terrible TV, Catherine? Just sitting like reality shows. Are we talking Golden Bachelor? Yes, like stuff like that. Exactly. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
No, Soberness could become like a dating show, like the Sober Bachelor, but how boring would that be? The most fun part about those shows is that everyone gets tanked and does ridiculous shit. So we won't do that. That won't be our next.
Or everybody's just like oversharing in the dating, like on first date, and you're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
You're too intense. You're too present.
Yeah.
Relax it a little bit.
Dating sober to me sounds like a nightmare, by the way. I applaud people who do it, because if you are somebody who likes to indulge in alcohol in social situations, the idea of any social situation without one is bad enough. But a dating social situation would have been a nightmare. But by the way, maybe that's why it never worked out for me and anybody, because I would, drink to get through the date. And lo and behold, there weren't a lot of second dates.
So. There are many cultures where they do it. I grew up in a culture where that's all you did, sober date.
Wow. And it worked out for you?
Yes. Cool. How about you, Raquel? What's your crutch? Oh, there she goes. Records,
DJing, reading. I've been on since the election. Kat remembers these early conversations. I had to go inward. I wear lots of hats, and I've been on a tear. I've always loved reading, and I am reading a ton of spirit books, a ton of autobiographies, and I was buying them like mad. And then I was like, oh, right, there's a library I could use. So even today I went out and got like 4 books. I'm reading 4 at any time. It's such a Sagittarian brain. But vinyl, I've been collecting vinyl my whole life, and I realized like my crutches are like digging in the crates, I have lists of books and albums I still don't have in my possession, and I keep a running tally. And the other night I was having a stressful night. Discogs.com, $100 later, I'm waiting for a bunch of records to show up. But I try to transmute that into the community on Twitch, and they go through the process with me where I'm able to share music that I got. They're able to get excited. They get to see the album art. So while it's a crutch, it also is something I'm giving back to the community. But it's definitely that and chocolate.
For everyone who wants to listen to something great from time to time, you should get onto Twitch and check out DJ Aviva. Our very own Raquel Bruno is also DJ Aviva in her other life. And Miss Cat Serrano also has a podcast called Future Ancestors. And Mr. Esteban Serrano, Chatty Cathy over there, he has a show called Rap Dads. All of this is not to be missed. And Radula actually sells incredible jewelry. So, not only are we Team SOB, but everybody else has other very robust lives as well, which is one of the things I love the most about our team, by the way. Everyone's into something. We're all grown-ups. We have a pair of 42-year-olds and 3 other 52-year-olds, and we have 2 other 52-year-olds at large. That's Marta and Sharon, 2 of my best friends, longtime TV professionals who have been advisors to us and have helped me jumpstart this whole thing. And listen, I say it all the time, but I want to wrap up by saying once again to my team how incredible you guys are and how you've helped me get back to being myself. And I really, really appreciate it. I could not have started this without you, and I can't imagine doing it without you. And your roles aren't just what you do, like social media or sales or booking. It's the support and the vibe and how calm and positive everybody is. And I am very grateful. So thank you so, so much, my friends and colleagues. Hey, thanks for checking out the show. Once again, this is Soberness. Please don't hesitate to follow us, to like us, and subscribe. Definitely subscribe. It'll help us out a lot. And drop us a line. Let us know how we're doing, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, and tell us your own sober story. Thank you so much. Again, this is Soberness.